Over to you, Narayan.
Right. Thank you, and a good evening, and welcome to all of you. This this webinar essentially was meant to be a couple of weeks ago, but we couldn't quite find the right time because of different clashes of priorities. So finally, we are glad that we could schedule it here. Uh, I had independently approached Subhash to do this webinar on supervision because I just finished a program on supervision, and just wanted to see how much supervision is known, and how to talk about it. And when speaking with Subhash, I realized that Rekha is also on the same journey, and we got together and decided we'll do this jointly. So what we have for you today, and before I start sharing my screen, is really a very basic intro to supervision, right? So we are talking about what coach supervision is, uh, and how is it different from coaching? Because a coach could very well go to another coach, right? So how is going to a supervisor different from going to a coach? We also want to understand what kind of issues a coach can bring into supervision, and therefore what are the benefits of supervision. And finally, we've got a demonstration for you, and to aid the demonstration, Rekha will also share with you a coaching framework, and then we'll use that same framework in the demonstration. Then we got some time for Q&A. Anything else you wanted to add here, Rekha?
No, that's good, Narayan.
That's good. Okay. So the definition of supervision that we are using comes from the ICF. It's a bit ironic because of all the coaching bodies, ICF is the slowest to give formal recognition to coaching supervision. But at the same time, it's done a lot of thinking on coaching supervision. And the definition that ICF has come up with is actually one of the better definitions of coaching supervision, right? So it's essentially not going to read this, but what we're talking about here is a forum where a coach regularly, or periodically, brings in their work experiences and tries to learn from them with a view to benefit not just the coach, but the entire system, the client system as well, the client and the system around the client, right? So the client's organization, the coach's organization, and so on. And so that's kind of the working definition here, if you will, of coaching supervision. It is like coaching a dialogue. It is a reflective dialogue, and it's collaborative learning, right? So there's a lot of similarities with coaching. However, the difference, if you will, comes from, we consider, if you look at the functions of coaching supervision, right? And essentially, there are three functions. We call them formative, normative, and restorative. Okay, so the formative function is really where is the continuing education piece, right? So where a coach develops their own style, a coach develops greater depth along the competencies, but more importantly, along how to use those competencies and how to develop their own style using frameworks and tools. You could also look at it as, the metaphor is you bring your toolkit into the conversation with a supervisor, and then you look at, what tools you've been using, which have kind of, worn out and need either resharpening or replacement, right? Then there's a normative element to it, which is around all the ethical questions that come in coaching, right? To what extent can I maintain confidentiality? When I'm working in a corporate engagement and the sponsor and the client have different aspirations, who wins? And of course, all the confidentiality issues are around of that. but really it's a space where, you know, a coach can bring those questions and work together with somebody who, you know, somebody who's trained to have that kind of conversation with the coach. And finally, there's a restorative element. You know, as coaches, we are not immune from you know, the emotions of our clients. In a way, we kind of encourage our clients to surface those emotions, and we bring back some of that. And like we help our clients to manage, process their emotions, we too need somewhere to, you know, bring those emotions and work through those. And that's the restorative element of supervision. Would you want to add something here, Rekha?
So that was very beautifully captured, Narayan. I just wanted to kind of share that the formative is the core of the functions, and restorative and normative are kind of the accessories. So the whole idea is to develop the coach. But if there is something blocking the development of the coach because of some emotional impact, because they are carrying emotions that they have received from their clients and so on, then we need to go into the restorative space. And if there are some, if the supervisor notices that there may be some ethical violations, then we go into normative. But primarily, it is the formative.
And when you mean formative, it's not just around competencies, it's the whole person of the coach.
Yeah. In fact, it is not really around competencies.
That's correct. That's
that
right.
Goes into the mentor.
That's right. That's right. Yep. And so how does a coach benefit from supervision? You know, said, especially for coaches who are starting out or have just, you know, started out a short while ago, working on developing their coaching style, right? Stay emotionally balanced, which is that part around the restorative part. Expand the toolkit, which is again on the formative side. Work through ethical issues. Gain greater awareness of themselves. And I don't know about you, but you know, one of the challenges that, you know, working as a solopreneur, working as a coach on your own, is that you somehow feel a bit isolated. And joining and being part of a supervision group, right? Like coaching, there can be either one-on-one supervision or there can be group supervision. You know, gives you that sense of belonging, that you're part. It's pretty much like, you know, you're part of this community. That's another community, and it's a bit more intimate because you're sharing your development journey together. And it's also a good way to develop reflective practice, because as coach, I mean, you know, coaching is a reflective practice, but developing as a coach also requires reflective practice, and this is you know, a good platform for developing those skills. But as you know, many of you asking what's coaching, supervision, etc. It's not all that popular, at least not outside Europe, right? In Europe, it's pretty much accepted and pretty much part of the coaching ecosystem. However, when it comes to both the Americas and Asia, it's yet to take off. And the barriers that people mention when it comes to coaching supervision is, what they say is they're very busy, right? No time to go back for, you know, regular supervision. Another reason that people cite is, you know, I'm not doing that much coaching. I don't have that many clients. I've not got that many issues. So why do I need supervision? And of course, there's the economic bit also, right? Like coaching supervision tends to be, you have to pay a price. You have to pay fees. So that's another expense. That's an additional expense. However, beneath those stated objections, a lot of people also express a fear of being seen as incompetent, right? You're bringing issues into your session with your supervisor, and there's a fear that, in that analysis, you might show up as incompetent. You're being really vulnerable here, and that vulnerability can sometimes, also give rise to fear. Of course, it's not mandatory, at least on the ICF side. And other excuses are like, I'm very new, I don't need this right now. I'll go for supervision once I have an established practice, etc. And then, like, some of you ask, what is supervision, right? There's not enough knowledge about that, and that's what we're partly trying to address today. Okay, so these are the barriers to coaching supervision. Rekha, do you want to add something to this?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, because some more are showing up, right? One of them is, I don't need it because I'm very self-reflective.
Yeah.
So I do a coaching session and then I do a lot of reflection and I get a lot of insights, and I think that is enough.
Yeah.
But what we are not aware of is that when we are doing a self-reflection, are we also aware of our own blind spots, right? Not really, right? So it may not, it's a good start, but it may not be adequate.
Yeah. And the other thing that comes to mind is coaching supervision. Why there is a power, that there is a perceived power differential, right? And it's like, do I really want to go through that? I mean, most coaches have gone through corporate life and have decided to strike out on their own, and they don't necessarily want to go back into this. But that's a misconception also, because there is in reality, it's not a supervision in the sense of management supervision, right? This is a very different process. Yeah.
So, Narayan, if we inserted a hyphen between super and vision,
yes,
perhaps indicate what supervision really is. It's about supervision, means it is about distancing ourselves so that we get a wider perspective.
Yeah.
And a better vision.
Indeed. Which brings us straight into this idea of, what kind of frameworks do we use? And I'll hand it over to you here, Rekha.
Sure. Thanks, Narayan. There are a number of supervision frameworks that I'm sure Narayan has gone through during his training, and I'm going through during my training to be a coach supervisor. But at the foundation of all of these frameworks is a framework that Peter Hawkins has defined. And most of the others are like either takeoffs on those or sitting on top of that one. So today we thought we will just give you a small introduction to the seven-eyed model of supervision. Yeah, exactly. So Priya, that's a good point you're bringing. Let me just address that. In most other helping professions, as they are called, right, supervision has become mandatory now. And I'm sure it's going to come to coaching very soon. I believe it is required. So this is a seven-eyed model of coaching supervision. Very briefly, not going into too many technicalities of it. There are two basic systems over here. There is one coaching system, there is a supervisory system, and then there is the larger world outside. So that is how you would look at it from inside out. So if you look at it from outside in, there is a larger world, then there is a supervisory system, and then there is a coaching system. So in the coaching system, you have the coach and the client. In the supervisory system, you have the supervisor and the coach. And then there is the whole dotted line, system, which is around them. And what the seven-eyed model talks about essentially is it provides us with seven lenses or seven eyes, or through which we explore what's going on in the world of the coach and the client, in a nutshell. So there are these seven eyes or seven lenses. You start with the first one. The first one, the lens is the client. So who is your client? What are they, where are they from? What are they going through? Who are their stakeholders? What exactly is the issue that the client is bringing? How do they come into the session? How do they go out of the session? A lot of things that the coach is going to talk in the supervision session about the client, their client, the coach's client. So in this context, coach is the supervisee, then you have the supervisor, and the client is the coach's client. Okay. I number 2 is the interventions that the coach is using with the client. So the toolkit that Narayan was referring to, that gets talked about. So what do you do when you're coaching? What kind of tools do you use? How does your client receive those tools? What is their reaction to those tools? What else have you tried, and so on? That is expanding or examining the toolkit, what the coach does. I number 3 is the relationship between the coach and the client. What is your relationship with each other? If you were to use a metaphor, how would you describe your relationship with each other? What comes up for you when you are in a session with the client, and so on. I number 4 is got to do with the supervisee's self-awareness, both in the supervision session as well as when they were coaching the client. I number 5 has got to do with the relationship between the supervisor and the supervisee. So in the room right now, while your client is virtually present with us, what's going on? What kind of a relationship do we have with each other? And is that similar to what is the relationship you're having with your client? So these 3 I's, okay, 4, 5, 6, and 7, actually 5, 6, 7 are the most important I's in the supervision world. 6 is what's going on for the supervisor. So as you are telling me, as a supervisor is telling me, what am I experiencing? What am I thinking? What emotions am I feeling? And where are they coming from? What are they saying about me, about you, about your client, and so on? The high level of presence and self-awareness required for the supervisor. And I number 7 is the ecosystem. So who are your stakeholders? How are they impacted? Who are your client stakeholders? How are they impacted? If they were in the room with us right now, what would they be saying? What would they be thinking? So that is examining the larger system of stakeholders. So when we do a supervision session, we use a framework. This is the framework that we use. And inside this framework, then we use different tools and techniques that either have been taught to us or we have acquired through our coaching journey or from other things that we have studied in our lives. So that is how the coach supervision is modeled. You want to add something, Narayan?
No, I think this is a this is looking at issues and people from multiple angles, right? And to me, this is a very useful framework. It's also very flexible in a sense. It's not that in every coaching supervision session you actually go mechanically through each of these, but these are different lenses through which you can look at the issue that the coach brings in, and then you really focus your energy and attention on the ones that seem the most juiciest, right, in the situation. Yeah.
True, that's true. Thanks, Narayan. So yes, Mani, it is this framework is actually for one-on-one. It can be expanded to group, but there are some more sub-I's that have been added when it comes to team coach supervision, which is what David Clutterbuck has also presented. Like, for instance, if you're talking about a client being the whole team, then what is the relationship of the coach with the team? What is the relationship of the coach with the team leader, with the individual members of the team? Those become sub-I's of I3, so to say. Yeah. Okay. So with this, are we good for a quick demo of what we're talking about here, Narayan?
Yeah.
All right. So what we have done is we have deliberately kept Q&A to the last so that, all kinds of questions might pop up for you. You can just keep noting them and we'll all address them all towards the end so that we can have this as a flow.
Would you like somebody to time us or tell us?
That's okay. I'll keep.
You'll do it. Thank you. Right.
You can take off the slides.
Yeah. I'll stop sharing.
This is also a test of how well have I absorbed the framework by now. I'm roughly halfway through my training, right? So let's see. Okay. So Narayan, it's not going to be a full-fledged session, yeah? And let's see how much we can cover in the next 15 minutes or so, 15, 20 minutes. So I just want to start off the way we do supervision. I just want to start off with some amount of contracting. Yeah, and so I know, but I just want to call it out that supervision is mainly about reflection and learning, right? So it's all about you and I learning together so that we can impact our stakeholder systems and you can improve your practice as a coach, okay? And therefore impact your client and their systems and so on. So this is also a safe and confidential space. And though we know that there are people listening in to us, so at any point in time, if you feel that we have breached confidentiality, just please call it out.
Sure.
And you can use anonymity now. You don't need to name your clients and so on. We'll just talk about them, but not address them. Yeah.
Right.
All right. So today, in order for you to feel safe, I know you and I know each other somewhat, but for you to be feeling safe as a supervisee in this session, who do I need to be for you?
I think I'd like you to be more supportive than challenging today.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Right.
And anything particularly that you feel I should do or I shouldn't do towards that?
This is still a bit raw for me, still processing this. At the same time, I'm a bit concerned, especially since we are in a group, because the client is actually, quite prominent. I'm not going to name or identify the person, but somebody prominent. So I'm also going to be a bit careful about what I say so that I don't identify.
Yeah. Maybe what might help is if you don't give too many details so that
Yes.
you don't become pointers to revealing the person's identity.
Indeed. So I'll do my best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll support you in that also.
Thank you.
Yeah. And at any point in time, if you feel, because we are going to be in the flow, if you feel that, I'm moving away from being supportive and veering towards being challenging, please
Thank
call
you.
out. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Narayan. So what would you like us to explore together today?
So what I want to bring into this session, Rekha, is a client that I initially contracted roughly a year ago, and we had a really great start. And then the client totally vanished from the radar. Mm-hmm. Not really. Like I said, this is a very, socially prominent person. So you can see them, but really in terms of our relationship, it went totally blank, no response at all. Despite several attempts, nothing happened. And then more recently, about 3 months ago, I tried one last time to reestablish contact, and the person said, yes, I'm really sorry. I want to continue. We reconnected. We had one session, and we kind of decided to do more of that. And then again, there's total silence, right? So this has left me with two different feelings. One, of course, is this whole question around, did I, was there a good match, between client and coach? Was I the right coach for her, and did I really meet her coaching needs? So kind of ruminating on that, going, also my own competency and other things. That's one set of issues. The other set of issues is, I want to deliver what I promise, right? And this person contracted me for an entire engagement, paid the whole fees in advance, and I feel helpless that I am unable to deliver the value that I promised. And that's kind of, those are the two issues in my mind. Yeah.
Difficult questions to have, right?
Yeah.
So what kind of agreement did you have? I mean, I know you're saying that you had a full contract and all money was paid up and all, but was there anything articulated in the agreement that you had with your client?
Well, the coaching outcome was supposed to be actually a career shift, right? This person felt limited in their current role and organization and was looking to actually move into another organization, and was very specific about what kind of organization, what kind of role. So it was really around that. But beneath that, there was also this thing about she was spreading herself thin, doing a lot of different things, and what we also wanted to do was get more focus, to prevent that kind of dilution, let's say, of the energy, and make sure that there is a clear forward momentum in the areas that are really important. So those were the two broad outcomes that we were working to.
Yeah, so there were objectives which were clearly articulated. Was there also an articulation of expectations from each other in terms of what you provide, what the person will bring forth, and so on?
Yes, we in fact, this was an engagement where we had clearly seen the entire coaching journey in terms of milestones and frequency of engagement, and how who I would be as a coach, who she would be as a client, and we'd gone through that. We had a really good kind of onboarding into the engagement, right? We went through not just an exploratory call, but we also did a discovery session, and invested a lot of time into really understanding what was going to happen, and what the client wanted out of it, and how we were going to go about it. So I don't see that there was any misalignment in terms of either the outcomes, the measures of success, or even broadly the approach we would be taking. Yeah.
Okay. So there are these questions that you have brought today, right, to a conversation. Yeah. What is actually your concern over there?
So, I mean, when I think about it logically, I don't see any evidence for either of my apprehensions, right? Because I don't think, because like I said, we went through this elaborate process of exploration, discovery, and so on, and we had a good chemistry session and so on. So I don't think there was that misalignment. Neither was the topic brought into the two topics brought into this, right? The career pivot, as well as the kind of focus thing, not something that I'm unfamiliar with and haven't worked on. So logically, it doesn't seem to me that there's anything out there. And logically, on the other hand, also in terms of keeping my word, fulfilling on my commitment, I think I've done enough in terms of trying to reach out, and at some point even offering to close this out in a proper way, and even refunding some of the money, etc. But for what strikes me is the inability to bring this to a closure. Let's put it that way. I don't feel, closure on this.
And what would, not from logic, but if you had to use some other way of looking at it, what would closure be?
Honestly, sometimes I think if I could just go back and say to this person, hey, this obviously is not working out. Please take this money back, and let's kind of close this formally. That might be one way of looking at it.
So, given this background, Narayan, if we had to look at your relationship with your client, right? How would you describe your relationship with your client?
I think the metaphor that comes to mind is birds of a feather. It's almost like I could sense very much a similarity in terms of how the client was thinking, what she was aspiring to, how she was going about it, what her was. So there was good identification. I'd say I could identify with what was happening with her, to her, etc. At the same time, in terms of personality, it's quite different. She's quite outgoing and pretty assertive, pretty I would say extroverted. I tend to be very introverted, so it wasn't a like for like thing, but at the core I could see that in terms of values, desires, etc. There was a good match, right? So I would say I felt a deep connection, and it seemed to me that that connection was there also from the other side.
It's interesting that you called it birds of a feather, though you all are so different personality wise.
I know that metaphor seems to break there, but yeah, somehow yes, it's not so much the externalities, but really I'm thinking the similarities were more on the inside, right? In terms of values, what we value, and the way we are going about it, etc.
So, if you were to look at this, you called it out as identification very beautifully, right? And you could identify. So, you think that this identification or you identifying with your client might have left you in a certain way?
Probably. I mean, if I think about this clinically, if I look at it, as a third party, it seems to me that it's not such a big deal, right? I mean, it happens. Clients decide they're no longer interested in this engagement and give up. But I think it's that identification, and I'm trying to understand, how I would behave in this situation, and probably that identification is kind of coloring how I think this client should be behaving in this situation, and that probably is making it a bit more difficult to accept.
Something over there for us to explore more?
So, I mean, as I'm saying this, it's kind of coming to me that, how, of course, I mean, we are different people, right? We are different people. We do have a lot of things that we identify with in common. And I mentioned values earlier, but clearly this is not a value that we are aligned on, right? And if I just think about, all the relationships, all the engagements have been in, it's not that this is totally unexpected behavior. It's just that somehow this seemed, especially unexpected, I would say, right? So in this case, it seemed unexpected, and probably I'm dwelling too much on that aspect of it, which is making it difficult to, just accept the logical answers that I'm coming with.
Yeah. Very interesting you using that word logical, because I just realized as we are speaking, what I'm trying to do over here is I'm trying to approach this whole thing through my logic. Yeah. And I'm wondering if that is exactly what you're doing with your client, and that's not sitting well.
You are right. You are right in a way, right? And this is probably a belief. Like, and most of the work that I do is leadership coaching, which is specifically around helping leaders work better with other people and so on. When it comes to their own careers, or when it comes to productivity, or focus and all those other things, I find it very different from, or my approach at least tends to be very different. It tends to be more framework driven and so on. And but also, it's not all that. We also go beneath the surface. We also focus on the who. But probably, I don't know. I mean, is that the question? I'm kind of confusing myself here. Maybe I don't know whether that was the question.
I'm wondering whether the logic approach is what we are using now, is the approach you're using, and that is not sitting so well with your client. And maybe because that is the approach you're using, like you shared just now.
Yeah.
Similar engagements, right?
Yes, that's right. That's right.
This client, it is not sitting well. I don't know. I'm just wondering, because there is a lot of logic going on here between you and me also.
Well, yes, there is logic going on, and I think, yes, in general, I would say for the kind of problems, or the kind of challenges we were working on, the kind of issues we were dealing with, the logical approach, or the or a systematic approach seems kind of more. It's a bit like, in a way, and it's just something coming up to me, right? It's just something like, when we are using the supervision model, etc., sometimes we can go about it very mechanically, right? You say, okay, let's start with this, now let's move to that. In a way, there's a tendency to do that. At least I notice that when I'm working on certain kinds of engagements, there's a tendency to do that, and there's less of that when I'm doing more with how people are being leaders, and how they are showing up in their roles, etc. So yeah, maybe, but that's what we contracted for. I mean, there's a clear outcome that we contracted for. So,
yeah, but maybe you contracted for that, but maybe it's more about the approach than about the outcome.
Possible. Yeah.
So I'm noticing right now also, right? I mean, we are not talking about feelings, we are not talking about emotions, and we are not talking about anything else below. So is that how it is, or is that how it was over there also?
Maybe. Yes, to a certain extent. Let's put it this way, right? I mean, there's two aspects to this, right? The situation, which is what you're trying to achieve, yeah, and that's that's kind of, where am I now? Where do I need to be? And that's obviously the conversation. But then, the other thing is, who am I and who do I need to be, to get there? It's possible that I was probably making more assumptions there about, the readiness or of this person than it's true in reality. Maybe I don't know. This is just an afterthought. It's not
Yeah.
it's not something that I concluded during the engagement. Yeah.
So if we were to look at all that we have reflected on different directions and the concern that you came in with, how does it look like now to you?
So one clear thing that I need to really look at is my coaching approach on certain kinds of engagements, right? I think there is a risk that I am being very superficial, very transactional with certain kinds of engagements. That's definitely something I need to go back and look at, other similar engagements and see, how much of that is there. I suspect already that that's the case, but I just need to make sure and then see how I can be different, right, in those situations. The other, which is specific to this, is something that came to me. I think I am over-identifying with this person to the extent that I'm assuming that this person should have the same values as I do. Now, that's not an assumption I make in general about people. And maybe that's where the thing is. I just step back and know that this is a very different person. It's not, with all the similarities, there are also a lot of dissimilarities, right? And it's not me. It's it's a different person. So I shouldn't be expecting that they would have the same reactions or responses in any given situation. So I should just kind of accept that this is how it is.
Yeah, at the same time, that this person was not the same and that there was a difference. I'm wondering, how did that hit you?
Not badly. I mean, it's fine. I mean, we are different people, of course. We're different individuals. I said there's difference in personality also, but there was a fair amount of identification, and I can see that that's also not good in a relationship like coaching, right? Don't want to over-identify with the client, and because that leads to all kinds of assumptions about, and that's where you lose the focus. I mean, you're assuming that other person is thinking like you, and so it can limit the impact of coaching for that person. Yeah.
So now with all of this, how does closure look like to you with this person?
I think I have to go back to them at least once and say, hey, we've engaged quite a long time ago, but really not this thing, and I don't think this is helpful to you. Would you like to bring this to a close? And I should be ready to not hear back or not get a response. I should be willing to accept a no response as well.
Is there any other possibility? Since you're saying you will pose the question to your client, right? Would you like to?
Sorry?
You said you will pose the question to your client. Would you like to bring it to a closure? Now, is there a possibility the client will say no?
Yes, because that's exactly what happened when I said, when we reconnected 3 months ago. And see, the thing is this, right? I mean, it's possible that, this client doesn't need that much of support or, and maybe a conversation, one session is enough for them to kind of, go ahead etc. And maybe the need will resurface after another 8-9 months. But at least I think it would help if there was some understanding around that rather than this silence. Yeah.
All right, good. And like you said, right, you're going to take this whole thing out. So if you apply all of this out to your other engagements,
Yeah.
you see that panning out in terms of the impact on your clients and their stakeholders.
Absolutely. I think especially with those clients that I'm working with on the kind of issues that I mentioned, where it's not so much people, but really a kind of harder goal that they're working towards. I need to be careful that I'm not neglecting the person.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So are we good to wrap
I think
up?
we are, and we have only 10 minutes left for Q&A. So let's
That's,
close it here. Yeah.
how would you like us to close this so that you're complete?
I think I have at least a couple of takeaways from this. One is how to approach this person. The other is to take a hard look at how I'm being with certain clients. So those are two actions, and I think that's good enough for today.
Okay, great. Thank you, Narayan. And I hope that I was supportive and not challenging today.
You were. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. So good for some questions. Open to questions, people. What is beyond logic? You want to answer that, Narayan?
Well, yes, right. I mean, this whole thing around how do you approach something that a client brings in to a coaching session, right? Do you focus on the situation, in which case the approach is going to be very logical. On the other hand, if you focus on the person, you have to kind of go beneath the logic into, I think some people have described as the underbelly of emotions, right? So you have to be willing to, be in that messy, murky space, to kind of really figure out who they are as a person, what their values, beliefs are, and work at that level, which is really not logical if you think about it, right? So that's the beyond logic piece. So more on the person and less on the situation is how I would, describe as a shortcut. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. That was Narayan. So what are the differences between exploratory and discovery call in supervision? Anything particular you meant by the word call over here, Mani? You want to come in? Oh, we can't bring him in. Can we bring him in?
Yeah.
Are you going to bring him in?
I will try.
Okay.
This is money, right? So
Yeah, Somayaji Manikant.
yes. Now I have to go to participants and allow to talk. Yeah,
You can speak.
money. Yeah.
That you contracted with. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. I'm in the middle of a jungle, so appreciate you can hear me.
Yeah.
Quick question for you, Narayan. Wonderful session and beautiful support, Rekha. My question is on, you mentioned when you contracted with the client, it went beyond the exploratory call into discovery.
Yeah.
So can you, say a little bit more about that? Thank you.
Sure. The exploratory call is just a brief session of 30-40 minutes, just to make sure there's not a waste of time, right? So that there's a real problem. There is a this is a person that you are not uncomfortable working with. That so as a coach, you're just making a call. Is this something that I could possibly work with, right? Can I bring value to this situation? The discovery call is more focused on helping the client decide, right? So it's almost it's a full-blown coaching session where you're taking them through what the challenge is and how it might get to resolution, etc. So it's a full-blown, it's coaching, but it's at the very beginning of the engagement. So you're not going into the details, but you're looking at it from a big picture. So I would say the exploratory call is more for me as a coach to decide whether this is a client I want to be interested in, and the discovery session is to really help the client see if this is going to work for them. Yeah. Does that answer you?
Yeah, it does, seems to have.
Okay.
Any other questions, anyone? Questions, comments, observations, all welcome.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Subhash.
Yes, Subhash.
Yeah, so we are not constrained in any way by the classical coaching process here, right? I mean, it's more like, I missed part of it because I'm outside, but there is absolutely no holds barred, like as you have a chat with a mentor, right?
Yes. Yes. And in fact, we did only reflective supervision right now, demonstration. But you can, in normative supervision, for instance, you can also be giving directions.
Yeah.
You can be teaching, you can be training, you can be, evaluating. All those also are, but what we are doing actually is this reflective supervision. So that is more or less like coaching, where we are asking questions and sharing our observations. And
Okay, sure.
so in a way, supervision is a superset in the sense that we have absolute freedom over here to share what is going on for us. Like if I'm experiencing some emotions, I'll share in the moment what is going on. And then, when I ask, let's say the supervisee, is what's going on for me? Is that what goes on for you with your client?
Yeah.
That's what we call a parallel process.
Parallel process. Yeah.
That's a very
Okay.
cool tool. Can you recall what?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Mani. So we started with I1, which is not necessarily always where we start. But, it's a good place to start because you get a feel of who the client is. And then you sort of sense that the client is in the room with you, though they are not in the room with you. So today we covered I1, who's the client, little bit about I4, which is about how the coach was feeling. A lot of I2, which is about what the coach is doing and how they are doing. I3, which is the relationship between the coach and the client. I7, where we talked about stakeholders briefly, and 5 and 6. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
5 and 6, where I was sharing what's going on for me and asking if that is what is going on for.
Yeah. And how it was parallel to
Yeah.
this thing, right? PK has a question here, says, does supervisor need to witness the coaching session? My answer is not really. How about you, Rekha?
Not at all. In fact, we don't even listen to the recording of the, right? Because it is all in confidentiality. And most often the supervisee doesn't reveal name, doesn't reveal who the person is. Because that the confidentiality agreement between the coach and client is actually, what do you say? Observed.
Yeah.
Or respected even in a supervision session. So no. But there are other forms of supervision. For instance, I think where therapy and other helping professions, the supervisor does sit in and observe what's going on. But that's not what we do in coach supervision.
But I've also, from some of the more senior practicing supervisors, at least a couple of them said they want the supervisees to bring in occasionally at least a snippet of a real coaching conversation. So just they can kind of see, if there's something lost in translation, because ultimately without that, we are relying on the coach to bring in the client virtually into the room, right? So sometimes it pays yeah.
Generally, it's the coach who pays PK, but if supervision is something that the organization is signing up for,
Yeah,
then it will be like in a coaching engagement, it will be the organization that pays. Right, Narayan?
right now I'm working on a coaching engagement for a organization, and part of the contract for that is that all the coaches who are in that coaching engagement will undergo supervision, and they've arranged for supervision. So in this case, the client is paying directly for the supervision. The client, meaning the sponsor, is paying for the supervision. Yeah.
Very mature client.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are top of the hour. If there are no questions, then thank you very much.
I just want to add a comment.
Yes.
Just want to add a comment.
Yes, Subhash.
For the benefit of others. Can you hear?
Yeah.
Yeah, you,
So,
Subhash.
couple of global platforms which hire coaches, like Coach Source, Landit and all. I've heard from them that good clients these days mandate once in a quarter kind of supervision.
Yes.
So this is something that I don't think we can ignore anymore. Yeah, so it's this is more for participants. Rekha and Narayan knows this for sure. Yeah, this is more for us. Yeah,
True.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Subhash, for that. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Have a good day, good night, and see you all.